Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. We are thrilled to have you join us today. I can see lots of people are just signing in and starting to get settled, so we're going to wait just a couple of moments before we get started. But if you are already in, please feel free to introduce yourself, your name, your community college or your organization or employer, and your role in the chat box. We'd love to see who's here with us today, and I know many of the participants would also love to see who is joining them. Welcome, Kim and Katrina. Great to have you all. For those of you that are just joining, we can see the numbers climbing rapidly as everybody is logging in. So we're going to wait just another moment or so while everybody logs in and gets settled. If you are already with us, please feel free to introduce yourself with your name, your role, and your organization in the chat box. We'd love to see who's here with us. Arthur, you have some HCL colleagues joining us.
One HCL team.
Terrific.
Looks like a great group across the country.
Yeah, this looks great. I love to see it. Good diverse group. Terrific. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Christine Cruz Vergara. I'm the Vice President for Higher Education and Student Success here at Handshake. I'm super excited to welcome you here today for this fireside chat where we're going to talk about enrollment and workforce development in the COVID era. And I'm joined here by two of my colleagues who I will introduce momentarily. But before we do that, let me just run through a little bit of housekeeping for us. Now, first and foremost, the most common question we get is whether or not this is going to be recorded. So the answer is yes, this is being recorded as we speak, and we will be sending this out to you shortly afterward. It's going to go to all of the registrants. So if you have some colleagues that registered, weren't able to attend, they are also going to get a copy of this recording. And of course, all of you will get a recording, and you are actually welcome to share it with anyone, even if they didn't register for this session. So no problem at all. Now, you may have noticed everyone is on automatic mute this morning. Just because we can't hear your voice doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. There's a Q&A section down on the bottom toolbar. If you have questions throughout the session, please don't hesitate to go ahead and pop your questions in there. We have a team in the background that's going to actually be compiling all of the questions, and they'll be sending it up to me so that we can use those for the audience Q&A section. So again, there's a Q&A bar down at the bottom of your toolbar. Please feel free to enter your questions as you think of them. And in the chat, if something that the panelist says really resonates with you, you really agree, by all means, please feel free to give them some love as well so that they can see some of that interaction while they're also going through the panel too. And again, if you just happen to pop on, we will be recording this session and we will be sending it out to you at the end of today. All right. So today I am joined by two of my colleagues. Before I introduce them, let me give you a little bit of background about me. I'm a vice president here at Handshake, and I've been here for almost 2 years. Now, prior to my time working in ed tech, I actually spent the past decade of my career working in higher education. I worked at primarily four-year institutions, but my own personal history has me deeply connected to the community college space, as both my father as well as my partner both graduated from community college. So it's a real honor today to be able to talk to our community college partners and colleagues and to have Christy here on the panel. And without further ado, let me actually introduce both Christy and Arthur. We have Christy here today, and I want to make sure I get Christy's title correct. So I'm going to actually enlarge my screen just a little bit so I can see that more closely. She is our Associate Vice President for Workforce Solutions at Gateway College. Christy, thank you so much for joining us. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm in Northern Kentucky, just south of Cincinnati.
Terrific. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
And Arthur, we have from HCL Technologies. He is our Executive Vice President and Head of Sales for Transformation and Marketing. Arthur, where are you joining us from?
Good afternoon. So I'm in beautiful, sunny Orlando, Florida today.
Very nice. Thanks so much, Arthur. Glad to have you as well.
Thank you.
Awesome. So this is a very quick agenda for you. I'm actually not going to go through it in great detail. You can obviously read the screen, but this gives you a little bit of a sense of how the conversation is going to flow today between Christy, Arthur, and myself as we touch on some of the components of enrollment, what type of impact that has on early talent recruitment and the pipeline that many of our employers are looking at, trends that we're seeing in workforce development, and of course, how do we really strengthen those relationships and what are some opportunities for us to do more of that? And then we'll get to your open Q&A questions as well. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with Handshake, before we get started, let me just provide you with a very quick overview, since some of the questions that we ask and some of the comments that the panelists might make will reference Handshake or reference the network. And so just want you to have a little bit of context for that. Handshake brings together students, community colleges, and employers to really help democratize opportunity for all college students everywhere. Now, we started about 6 years ago, and our mission has actually not changed since we started. The mission has always been to democratize opportunity for all students, regardless of what school you went to, what you might have majored in, or who your parents know. And with over 1,100 colleges and universities as partners, with over 500,000 employers and 100% of our Fortune 500 on our platform, we're able to serve over 17 million students. We have 7 million active on the platform. Now, we started Handshake actually out of a problem that we felt deeply ourselves. Our 3 co-founders actually went to school in Michigan Tech. For those of you that happen to be from the Midwest or from Michigan, you know how far away Michigan Tech is. It's about 6 hours, I believe, north of Detroit, 8 hours from Chicago, or I might have gotten those flipped, but either way, it's many hours from those major cities, and they receive about 250 to 300 inches of snow a year. And one of the things that our co-founders found was that they were having a hard time connecting with employers that were essentially not in sort of the Michigan or Midwest area, because many of the employers that they were really eager to be able to find employment with out in Silicon Valley or in other areas of the country weren't going to make the trek all the way to Michigan Tech. And so while the talent was there, unfortunately, the opportunity wasn't. And they started reaching out to more students across other schools and employers to really see if this was a common issue. Now, while snow itself might not have been the issue everywhere, the issue of access and equity to different opportunities and for employers to be able to reach talent in all sorts of corners of the nation really was an issue. And they wanted to think about how we might be able to build a platform that could actually bring folks together and could remove some of those barriers so that we can actually access the opportunity and help students to connect to those things and really change the trajectory of their life, and also help employers to find great talent no matter where they are and where they wish to go. So with that, one of the things that I've already alluded to here is a pretty trite, quite frankly, statement that I know many of you have seen, but it remains true. We really believe that talent is distributed equally, but unfortunately, opportunity is not. That's a very real reality for many of our students, and it's one that we really wish to try and help change. Now, we know 86% of our students attend college because they really wish to be able to better advance their career. And with that, we really need to think about how are we going to work closely with our higher ed partners, with our employers, and with our students to think about how we open up those opportunities and we level the playing field no matter where students are and where they're coming from. Now, we know, jumping right into enrollment, and I'm going to actually go to Christy for this first question in just a moment, we know that enrollment is down. And this is actually quite unusual for the community college population. Typically, in most of our recession times or periods, we actually see enrollment in community college go up. And this time, we're actually seeing it decrease. We also know that the populations that have been hit the worst are, for example, our Black communities and some of our underrepresented communities. Now, they have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19, and we are seeing them impacted, obviously, here in enrollment numbers as well. So let's jump right into our fireside chat. And Christy, I'm going to actually start with you. I think often we don't, in higher education, we have a lot of different offices that do a lot of different things, and we sort of focus on those functions, right? I know in the four-year space, you have admissions, you have enrollment management, you have career services, so on and so forth. And you don't necessarily always work super closely together when you're building out the strategy. And so I'm really curious from your perspective, if you could talk to us a little bit more about what you're seeing in enrollment, broadly speaking, on the community college level, but then also what are you all doing at Gateway to ensure that your enrollment is actually not dipping, because enrollment has direct impact to the type of talent that Arthur and other employers are going to be able to hire later on. So Christy, would love to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. So you're right. Traditionally in higher education, departments work in silos. So you have your one piece of the pie that your function focuses on, and you don't necessarily pay attention to a lot of the other components. Well, it's more important than ever that we stop doing that, right? So it's the same thing we talk to employers about. Whatever old habits need to die, you need to let them die, and let's start creating a more innovative future. So part of what we do at Gateway is essentially that. We have, for years now, I think we're in the 4th year, had a plan that we call Strategic Enrollment Management. And essentially, this strategic enrollment management plan is led by our cabinet, led by our leadership, but everyone in the institution has a role. So whether you are maintenance or you are a faculty member and everyone in between, you have a role in making sure that we're focusing on enrollment, we're focusing on awareness in the community, and how we can continue to build all of these different components of our plan. So at Gateway, we are actually fortunate that we have not experienced the same kind of impact as a lot of our colleagues have. We are one of 16 colleges within the Kentucky Community and Technical College system, and the vast majority of those 16 colleges are experiencing a pretty drastic dip in enrollment. Here at Gateway, we as a system, every college adjusted our enrollment goals back in March and April, because we knew, as you mentioned, Christine, this was not going to be our normal recession. We were not going to see the bump we saw in 2008. This was going to be a very different scenario for us. So we adjusted our enrollment goals, assuming certain percentage drop in the summer, the fall, and the spring. But what we've learned is with some of the different strategies that we've put in place is we've actually been able to exceed those adjusted goals. And we are just slightly behind where we were last year, year to date. And some of those strategies include student success connecting. So we have a volunteer role here at Gateway. We have just under 200 employees across faculty and staff. And of those 200 employees, everyone was asked to volunteer as a student success connector. So essentially you're adopting a list of students and you're just checking in with them on a weekly basis, saying, how are you doing? How are things going? Do you need a connection somewhere? Is there anything I can do to help you continue to succeed in your coursework? That could include tapping into our CARES Act funding. So we were able to use a lot of our CARES Act funding to provide technology to students, to also provide them with housing assistance. We have a fully operational food pantry for our students. So that has been a big piece of supporting them through this entire ordeal as well. Because we know, as you mentioned, our students are more likely to be directly impacted by the pandemic and by the economic impacts. So how can we really wrap as much support around them as we possibly can to make sure they succeed? Some other pieces that we were able to put in place, not just for retention, but for recruitment, is we waived the placement exam requirement as an entire system. Mm-hmm. So if you're coming in and you have not already taken a placement test, we can actually place you based on your GPA. So from your high school transcript, we use your GPA, and that just removes one barrier that someone might face as they're looking at pursuing post-secondary education. So we've been very, very encouraged by the continued engagement in our community and by our faculty and staff, who, if we haven't seen the amount of commitment and the amount of volunteer hours that everybody has stepped up and said, yes, I'll adopt students. We want to make sure that we don't lose them. We want to make sure that they continue on the path that they started. Then I think we would be facing a very different scenario.
That's really interesting. And it's, what you're explaining, while certainly it takes a lot of effort across a lot of different individuals, is also a small act of just checking in And you're not asking for a whole lot. It's not a huge program, but it is just some consistent small actions that seem to be making a difference in some of that. Now, I'm curious, Christy, because you've worked through several other recessions. I'm curious why you think the enrollment drop looks different this time than it has in the past. What's your take on that?
So one thing personally, I think as an observation is that the economic future is more uncertain, right? So in 2008, I think you saw the recession hit almost across sectors. There wasn't any one that fared better than another. This time is completely different. We are seeing some of our community partners close altogether, while others don't have enough bodies, to be able to continue operation. So while in 2008, everybody was kind of depressed across the board, right now we're seeing some companies that are absolutely thriving. So there's this mix of different demand by employers, but then also within the dislocated worker space. So you have folks who may have been dislocated by their work and they're on unemployment, but they're also hesitant to re-engage, right? For a lot of different reasons. One is because of the uncertainty of the pandemic. It could be fear. It could also be childcare concerns. Childcare is such an enormous issue that I think everybody is waking up to right now. We've been talking about it for a very long time in the education space. But now everyone's realizing this is really an economic crisis. If we don't have reliable childcare built into our system, our economy can't succeed. Yep. So I think there's a lot of different variables mixed in this time that just look very different than a normal economic recession.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Arthur, I'm curious from your perspective, and feel free to kind of take this from whichever angle you wish. But as we think about some of the trends and you're thinking about training the workforce, hiring new talent, what are the things that you're seeing employers really look for? Is it more diversity in their pipeline? Is it more apprenticeship programs? Is it stronger relationships with community colleges? If you have an opinion on what you want to see in terms of enrollment at community colleges, what would that look like?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Christine, and thank you, Christy. It's really a privilege to have this discussion with you today and with all of the people that have joined in around the country. If you don't mind, I'm going to step back for a second and just give you a quick 1-minute overview of HCL. That'll also give some of the perspective that I'm coming to, with today from the lens that I walk through. I've been in the technology industry for 30 years. I've grown up in this space. I guess I'm an old timer now in this arena. Started right from Boston University into a college training program or into a management training program in the tech industry. And, I was lucky then to be able to leave university and go into a structured program that allowed me to get into this space. HCL is a $10 billion global technology company. Right now, aside of Amazon Web Services, we are the fastest growing technology company on the planet. We're born and raised, we like to say, in India 44 years ago. We've been in the US now for about 30 years. We have 153,000 employees, 25,000 of which are here in the US. And over the next 3, 4, 5 years, we will probably double that US component. And a big part of our strategy is hiring and really bringing in talent from the university level, not only people who are graduating, but also people that are mid-college career, giving them the opportunity to, either do an internship or come work for us, gain skills, and then have an opportunity post-graduation to join us full time. The first thing I'm going to say is that to me, the technology industry is real exciting. This is, I can never remember a period of time like this. I've lived through 9/11, Y2K, different recessions, and they were all terrible in their own right. This is by far the most, crazy period we've all lived through. Pandemic, economy, geopolitical, you name it, and of course, social change that it's not just here in the US, but it's around the world. And so it's created this massive uncertainty. One thing I feel very confident about is that if you look across all industries and all corners of life, technology has been kind of a consistent, uniform component of how society is advancing and how business is advancing. And so the number of jobs and opportunities that will be created in this industry are going to be enormous. And the little secret is we can't find enough people to really join the industry and to find a place in it. And by the way, it's not just computer scientists and engineers. We need people of all backgrounds, persuasions, um, you know, education frameworks, because the big thing that we've got to grapple with over the next decade is how to connect IQ and EQ. We're very technology oriented, but for us to connect to the market and to society, we need people who can translate human needs, human potential, and that's going to require more than just technology skills. We are making a massive investment here in the US. You'll soon see an announcement. We're opening up 8 mega centers in the United States. And really within a couple 100-mile radius of each of these centers, we are going to hire over the next few years several thousand college students. And so quite frankly, we need your help. We need this partnership because we have great opportunities. When people start out with a company like HCL, they might start out with one technology, one industry, but there's this lifelong opportunity to continue learning and to have a journey that can take you into different corners of the world and different opportunities. And, again, I'll go back to your question, Christine. There are a couple things that we love to see from people, as we profile and we look at people we'd love to join us. Diversity is the most important thing. Having a different range of thought. For us, our inventory and really our hearts and minds are all about people. So the wider the backgrounds, the wider the life experiences and the education experiences, the better off and the more differentiated we're going to become. So for us, it's really kind of a win-win, and it's a big passion for everybody that works at HCL. We love to see the next generation come in and really fuel, bring the spirit, bring the creativity, bring energy. And what that takes is a great close partnership with community colleges around the country. It's very easy, to go to whatever the top 300-400, mega universities. And quite frankly, we have found our better success has been students that come through the community college environment. There's a certain amount of first of all, roll up the sleeves mentality. There's a certain amount of desire, a great work ethic, a great aptitude and willingness to learn. And we find really our best and brightest employees years down the road have come from this environment. So we're very keen and very eager to engage this partnership.
That's great. Arthur, when you say you found the most success, do you measure that by retention or do you measure it by other factors?
Yeah, I think, retention is kind of the first table stake. We certainly would love people to start their career at HCL and then feel comfortable enough. And we're excited. Just 2 weeks ago, Forbes named us of 2,000 major corporations around the world. We were one of the top 30 best employers of 2020. We beat most technology companies and most industries, and we're probably the least known on that list. So it was a big deal for us. But it's a testament to the culture of the 150,000 people. So retention's one thing. For us, to me, the biggest measure of success is people come in and really learn and discover themselves and make a big impact and contribution to their client, to the community they live in, to their ecosystem, their family, their friends. And that's really something that is special about HCL is seeing people get to that level. So retention, and then, big impact.
That's fantastic. And Christy, I know that you work with employers like HCL and many others as part of advisory boards. Could you talk to us a little bit more about that? Are you seeing different trends that are coming up and bubbling up through those conversations with your advisory boards about what they're looking for or what skills they really want community colleges to be focused on in this next era as we continue to evolve quite rapidly across, as Arthur said, really any sector?
Sure. So we have a lot of conversations with employers across multiple different areas of our community relationships. And one of those is program advisory boards. So when you're talking about our technical programs specifically, those industry skills, we ask employers to come to the table and give us input. Look at what we're delivering look at what kind of graduates we're producing, and give us feedback. Tell us what we can continue to improve, because we are all about continuous improvement. We know that trends change. We know that skills change. We know that industry changes far faster than anything that you can find in education. So if we don't have their voice at the table, then we can't continue to innovate and keep up with those industry skills. So the voice of the customer is just as important in education as it is in business.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, your customer is the employers who are hiring your students, because you can't serve your students well if they can't land in a good job. So we have to make sure that we're pulling in that information and reinforcing all of our different programmatic aspects. And that isn't the only place where we get employer input. It's absolutely important for academic programming, but we do a lot more than academic programming at a community college. So Workforce Solutions, for example, the division that I oversee, we work directly with employers to identify their workforce challenges and then design custom testing and training strategies to help mitigate those needs. So what does that mean? It means that we come in and we say, what kind of problems are you experiencing? Let's talk through your recruitment. Let's talk through your turnover. Let's talk to someone who's been there for 5 years. Why are they still there? You know, those are called those stay interviews. Why are people staying? And how can we make sure that we differentiate you from other employers by those things that make you different, and make sure we're pairing up employees with the right cultural fit within a corporation, within a business. So we talk to a lot of employers in that respect. And then we also have career services, right? So at Gateway, Workforce Solutions, we manage the employer side of career services, while our student services department manages the student side of career services. And we work very hand in hand to make sure that those two pieces are bridged. So when we're talking to employers, the number one thing is we need people, right? And everybody needs people. I know we are in a recession, but as I mentioned, it's not a normal one. So we still have a lot of unfilled positions. So when we talk to them about those unfilled positions, some of the questions we have to ask is, how much is your immediate need and how much is a long-term need? Where if we're just plugging the hole, how long before that leak springs again? So let's talk about how we can go ahead and try to put some strategies in place to get you the manpower you need now, but then to look at things like apprenticeship pathways so we can continue to build your bench. So in 5 years, you're really just looking at entry-level positions you need to fill, because people are coming in the door knowing, if I come in an entry-level position, this is my career pathway, these are the opportunities, and these are the steps that I need to take to get there. So the more you can help walk them through that definition of this is how you lay out the opportunity and turn a job or a posting into a career for a student instead of just a job, the better success they're going to have in the long run.
I love that. Christy, do you have advice for the employers that might be on the line? They might be uncertain of whether or not, when they approach a community college, do they go to the Career Center? Do they go to workforce development? Who do they look for, and who should they start that conversation with? What would you advise them? Because I know you and I have talked a little bit about workforce development can actually mean different things in different organizations and different community colleges. So how would you advise them?
Absolutely. So I'm a little biased on this one, I guess, because I've been in workforce, for 18 years. And I always would start with workforce because, and this is something for the community colleges on the line, like no matter who they land at, there should be no wrong front door for an employer. So no matter who they get on the other end of that line, make sure that you are willing to do the back end work internally to connect them to the right place. So we in our community, we are very fortunate to have a very collaborative region, a very collaborative college. So I always tell employers, call me. It doesn't matter what you need. It doesn't matter if you need to hire someone. It doesn't matter if you need help with a tax incentive. It doesn't matter if you just need to find a map inside of a building somewhere. You just call me, and whether I'm the right person or not, I'll figure it out and we'll make sure you get to the place you need to be.
That sounds great. Christy, have you seen a shift in the types of questions or concerns that employers have been bringing to you and the types of workforce solutions you're needing to provide in just the past 6 months, for example, versus what you were dealing with a year ago or 2 years ago? Or no, it's been pretty consistent?
Sure. So one big shift has been virtual, like with everything else. So we had a lot of employers who were not willing to even consider any part of virtual training, whether that was a hybrid where we did some in person and some online or completely online. That shifted within 90 days. So in March, many of them were still like, no, we're just going to wait. And then by June, it was like, you know what, we might give it a shot. We might see if it works. So that was one piece of it. Another piece I would say that has kind of shifted is the flexibility. So one of the most important things we can be for our employers right now is flexible. So they know that if we have a course running for them, if we have training scheduled for them, if we have a meeting scheduled for them, they can pick up the phone and call me 15 minutes before it starts and say, hey, we need a timeout. You know, whether it's a production issue or more likely at this point in time, it's a COVID issue, you know, we can turn on a dime because that's what community colleges were built to do. Right. So we are supposed to be the educational arm within this country that is able to pivot. We can be responsive. We can move faster than your traditional post-secondary institutions. So that has really, really gone into the spotlight during the last 8 months or so.
That's terrific. And Arthur, on your end, what have you obviously seen shift in terms of recruitment and training, and obviously how COVID has impacted that? What areas are you all still hiring in? And, you know, do you see those positions remaining remote? Do you actually see them eventually coming back online and being physical? What's sort of your take so far from what you're seeing?
It's real interesting. You know, right from the outset of the pandemic, we've literally helped our clients put millions of workers at home around the world in, you know, even in the most remote countries where there's no internet access or security is an issue. So we're very comfortable with this environment. And I think technology in general is very comfortable with a distributed environment. There's no doubt there's been some challenges. You know, I think when you look at the recruiting cycle, there was always, you know, with the ability of going to a physical campus, no matter how large or small, there was the ability to bring people together, get in the same room, get to know each other, get familiar with each other. You know, you can't displace that socialization and the familiarity, and to be able to look at each other in the eye and have that contact and that engagement. But I think people are getting beyond that, and certainly, you know, there's no doubt in my mind that this kind of hybrid environment will be here to stay. You know, I think businesses in general are questioning, will they ever go back 100% even when the pandemic is over? Because there'll be other, you know, reasons, health and business wise, not to just have everybody at one campus or one office complex. So, you know, we'll continue to see a distributed environment. I just, you know, one thing Christy said, I really do appreciate the agility that community colleges can bring to the mix. And from our standpoint, where we've been really successful, we've been able to partner with schools that have, you know, there's a good dedicated relationship on both sides, you know, points of contact, as simple or as tactical as that sounds, you know, having relationship managers from both sides being able to connect and, you know, have a working plan and, you know, all of the basics together. We really need the help of schools to help, you know, organize the venue where we can have these kinds of conversations. There are many students right now, and I'm the father of two, one that just graduated in December and one that's a junior. And I see this all over the country. Students are really having a hard time right now, you know, whether they're on campus or they're not. Their world's been shaken. It's been turned upside down. They're seeing friends not getting jobs. Majority of industries are not hiring, particularly college graduates right now, you know, because of financial concerns. And, you know, I've even seen where students have been hired and then the whole program gets wiped out. And we have kind of a unique situation. We're one of the few companies that are saying, we're going full gangbusters here. At least 3,000 students will be hired in the next 36 months or so. Great opportunities all across the United States, mostly in technology roles. But, for my own department, for example, we're going to look at sales and marketing, internships and full-time hires. There will be other functions within the company that will be looking for students. For us, we're excited about making this investment in the U.S. market and building up a massive U.S. technology infrastructure to provide business services, engineering services. We're now one of the top 10 largest enterprise software companies in the world. So there's no shortage of opportunities, and helping us get the organized access and for all of the great high level things, it's just really getting down to the brass tacks of how do we engage in the cycle, what kind of venues do we create, and how do we get students to apply and go through the process and welcome them on board.
Yeah. Arthur, I'm curious from your perspective, do you see kind of moving forward, do you see two-year colleges or community colleges occupy more prominence in the role of sort of talent recruitment? And do you see employers and quite frankly, students as well, really look at a two-year degree the same way that they have been looking at a four-year degree? What's your
100%.
opinion?
100%. And one of she actually is a mentor of mine from many years ago, my early days at IBM, Ginny Rometty, who just retired from IBM. She introduced, at least in the tech industry, the concept of new collar jobs probably 5-10 years back. And I've been very heavily involved, even with the U.S. government, Department of Education, Labor, Commerce on this topic. That's where the future opportunity is. A lot of degrees, when you peel back and you look at somebody's major, I don't, you guys would know better than me what the statistics are, but only a small percentage of time in undergraduate is spent on an actual major. There's a lot of extra things that help obviously round out a student, but quite frankly, we believe we could give a lot of life experience as well. I think there's an opportunity now for people who may have been turned off to go into a full 4-year university, couldn't afford it or what have you, to go in and get some strong basic skills augmented by the experience that, the practical hands-on experience we can provide in a really cool professional environment, and then have a chance. I will tell you that the jobs we will offer students are pretty high paying, and it's a great opportunity for people to get that first step in life. So absolutely, the 2-year degree, the 2-year, the associate program, getting the start. And we look at it this way: education is that lifelong journey. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And Arthur, I want to actually circle back to something that you mentioned a couple of times, but I think would be important for other folks to hear as well, which are skills. And precisely what skills do you think are most important for community colleges to be focused on and thinking about, whether it's in their program review, whether it's chatting with their own employer advisory boards for that, or whether it's thinking about other experiences that can help to enhance some of those skills? And feel free to answer this in terms of hard skills as well as, or tech skills, as well as what some would call soft skills, or I call core skills. So happy to hear sort of the spectrum of thoughts there.
So there's probably 3 buckets I put skills into. And if you look at the technology side, there are all kinds of sub buckets there. You can have programming skills, and there are multiple languages that we work with today. And by the way, we do partner with a lot of schools, to kind of jointly teach them if necessary, or help shape the curriculum with some of our experts where that makes sense. But programming skills, but then you look at some of the next gen opportunities, right? Artificial intelligence is huge. Blockchain, huge. Security is never going to go out of vogue. The cloud, understanding how to do everything from migrate to engineer to deliver in the cloud is a big skill where people need help. So a whole, big bucket of technical skills. There are, I would say, business skills that are very important as well. Obviously project management is a fundamental, it's a role, but it's also a set of skills in our industry. So understanding, how to, you can almost think of it as operations management. I'm sure there are project management courses out there, but there's also a set of soft skills in and around interacting with clients and interacting with teams. And, I think those are very important. They can come in management forms, but they can come in a lot of different liberal arts manner as well. Um, and put them in the human skills. But I also think there's a certain amount of leadership and innovation and inspiration. And I don't know how to put that in a bucket, but and how you teach that. I mean, some of that happens at school, some of that happens at work. But I look at it this way, right? These are young people starting out their careers, and there's no doubt we're going to help them make the transition. It's a very big deal going from, especially in that age bracket, into the professional world and into a different setting. And there's certain things you have to learn, but learning how to interact with people, learning how to understand the process of innovation and discovery, and almost unlocking boundaries so that you can dream big and then understand how to turn that into something that's actually tangible and deliverable. And so there's certainly courses in and around that way, but for us, that's something that we also teach internally. We have our own concept around that called ideapreneurship. So it's the concept of taking ideas and entrepreneurship and merging them together, and discovering and then commercializing and making clients successful. But those are kind of the key skills. And I will tell you, they're a great group that's in attendance today. I hope we can probably have a follow-up session and dig just into those skills that are required.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for kind of organizing it into those buckets. I think it's helpful for everyone on the line to be thinking about those and to think about where those can show up, whether it's in your program or in other places. Christy, I'm really curious from your perspective, what strategies would you actually recommend many of your colleagues on the line take or put in place in order to really maintain these relationships with employers, to build these types of partnerships? And I'm curious if you could actually use Gateway as an example and perhaps talk about how you differentiated Gateway. You actually sit in the middle of a region with many post-secondary and private training institutions. And so how have you thought about that? And perhaps you can bring it to life with your own example.
Sure, absolutely. So the number one thing is be a good partner, right? So be a good partner in your community, be a good partner to employers. So as I mentioned before, there's no wrong front door. It doesn't matter what that employer needs. They need to know that you're there for their success, whether that directly impacts your work, directly impacts your tuition dollars, directly impacts your students or not. Because our community is only as strong as all of us in it. And that includes every single employer. So how we have really worked to differentiate is to make sure that everyone in the community sees us as that partner. Everyone sees us as somebody who should be at the table, regardless of what that real conversation starts as. So we can start talking through different strategies, start bringing in different collaborators, different stakeholders, and say, have you thought about this? Well, hey, I've seen this example, for example, we're involved in some national conversations as well through Lumina Foundation and some other great industry leaders. So we might be able to bring examples from other regions and say, this is how this community dealt with it. So in Northern Kentucky, at Gateway specifically, we are extremely fortunate to have a wonderful collaborative region here. And we have, for the last 18 months or so, been working on a workforce partner collaborative called the Northern Kentucky Workforce Partner Roundtable. And we come together as a group. There are a little more than a dozen organizations where we meet every other month, and we talk about what's going on, what we're seeing in the industry, what we're hearing from employers, and how we might be able to tag team. And also, in addition to those bi-monthly meetings, we have formed what we call the Strategic Workforce Action Team, or our SWAT team. And what we do is we offer all resources to employers in one meeting. Mm-hmm. So if you are an employer and you're not sure what the heck is out there, because how are you supposed to know all of the workforce resources that are available in your community if you're trying to do your regular job? Then you can reach out to any one of the partners involved in the collaborative, and we coordinate a SWAT meeting where we first listen to the employer and we say, where are you in your workforce journey? What challenges are you experiencing? And then each partner can just pop in with different resources and then follow up after the fact. So you have a point person with all of these partner institutions, and it includes local community-based partners. It includes our local Chamber of Commerce. It includes our state cabinet for economic development. So we have all of these partners at the table to say, no matter where you are in your challenges, no matter what you need, we're here for you. You know,
Yeah.
we are a network that is built to support employers. And then in addition to that, so there's 3 pieces to this collaborative. It's the bi-monthly meetings and that roundtable, the SWAT meetings, and then we also have what we call the Employer Resource Guide, which is housed on our Career Center's website. So the Kentucky Career Center houses this Employer Resource Guide, which is kind of the landing page for all of the partners involved. So if you're an employer, you can go to this page and you can say, I need help with recruitment. And there's a ton of resources for your help with recruitment. I need help with retention. And here's a ton of resources for retention, as well as funding and incentives. So you can see which partners are involved in each area. And if it's too overwhelming and you don't want to deal with it, you can just click schedule some time with an expert and we'll walk you through it. So I think collaboration in your community is absolutely key, making sure the employers know that this is not something you are in to get something back out of. You are in it because you are a partner within the community. You care about your community thriving, and you'll do whatever you can to connect them to the resources to make that happen.
That's great. Thank you. I'm going to actually pivot us to some of the questions that we're getting from the audience. We're already getting some really good ones. This first one is a 2-parter, and I'm going to give one part to Christy and one part to Arthur. So Christy, what would be your advice to employers on how to engage the right talent from community colleges? So I assume, how do you help the employers target the profiles or characteristics or groups of students that they might be looking for? And to Arthur, you can be thinking about this one. You'll go right after Christy. What would be your advice to students on what to look for from their first job or early career? So Christy, do you want to take that first?
Sure. So when you're looking at, there's a lot of different pieces you can put in place to make sure that you're attracting the right candidates and you're hiring the right folks. One of those is pre-hire assessments. We have a full service testing center where we do a wide variety of pre-hire assessments. But when you're talking about students in the already existing academic population and you want to figure out who you should engage, I would say don't focus so much, and I probably shouldn't say this as an educator, don't focus so much on the academic program. Unless it is an extremely technical position where you really need those hard technical skills and it's very specific, focus on what kind of characteristics you want in an employee that will make them successful. So if that means that you need somebody who is collaborative, if that means you need somebody who really likes to work in a team or who really likes to work alone. There's some positions where you're not going to have a lot of interaction with people. And if you put a people person in that role, it's probably not going to go well. So make sure that you're actually focusing on the technical skills, of course, but on the bigger picture. Who are you looking for? What kind of person are you looking for? I heard an employer during one of our SWAT meetings within the last couple of weeks say something that I wholeheartedly believe in, which is you hire the person for who they are and you train what they need to do. So you're really looking for that right cultural fit. So make sure you do your own homework and make sure you understand what kind of candidate you actually need, because you may or may not actually have a good picture of that. Do a little bit inward reflection and say, this is the profile of somebody who would be successful in this role. And then reach out to your community college partner to talk about, okay, what does the student profile look like that matches with that good candidate profile?
Yep, super helpful. Arthur?
Yeah, so, from a student's point of view, it's interesting. It's going to be a challenging period of time when it's time to leave college and to start looking for that opportunity or even that internship during studies. There's a lot of considerations and sometimes there'll be opportunities in different industries. So nothing's really apples to apples. One of the things that we offer at HCL, our program is called RISE, R-I-S-E, and with the theory that we want people to rise up. And, I think there are a couple core elements. There's a program of education, both within school, if they're joining us kind of mid-studies, or they'll get educated and they'll continue to have their education journey at HCL. There's coordinated and focused both formal and informal mentorship. And networks and mentorship are a huge, huge part of taking that first step. And we like to make sure that it's done at least programmatically so that nothing falls through the cracks. Real on-the-job learning, so real practical experience. The types of projects people will get to work on, Fortune 500 or G2000. If you look at our clients, it's, you take the top 10 across any industry, we're working with 5 or 6 or 7 of those top companies, big brand names, and they'll get to really work on interesting things that they'll be very proud of to put on their resume. And is there a good, secure, wide open future path at the company that they're going to consider? And we believe at HCL that there is a very stable, wide open path. Like I said before, many technologies to learn and grow into, many industries. Some people might choose, hey, I love to work with banks. I don't really love to work with airlines, so we can accommodate those kinds of situations. And people can move within the US, and we have a lot of people in our company that move cross borders all the time. So that opportunity is there if people want to take that challenge. So those would be some of the things, if I was a student, that I would kind of look at. One other thing I just want to bring up, when I say student, a lot of times we think of the young age bracket. There are many students, people that are just either re-entering the workforce or taking a career change, really all age brackets. So by no means do we put any kind of limit or look at just age. Again, diversity in age as well is very critical.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great, Arthur. And I think regardless of where you are in your career, really examining or thinking about the development opportunities that an employer can provide, the growth opportunities an employer can provide are definitely 2 good variables or factors to take into consideration when you're taking that next step or that transition, whatever it might be. That's wonderful. We have a few questions from some schools that are looking for advice for any institutions that are considering using Handshake. So we already have some partners that are already on the line, of course. We also have some that I think are perhaps considering. And so from an employer point of view, as well as from an institution point of view, do you have any advice for them? And it was actually a really broadly worded question, so I guess you could take it any way you'd like.
So sure. I'll just say from our perspective, we're a relatively new adopter of Handshake. And the reason we made the choice to go with Handshake is because really it was 3 pieces. One was the user interface for students. We felt it was much more intuitive for the student population. It was much easier for us to be able to draw students in. We were able to, upload the data, do the single sign-on. So students, instead of having to seek it out and set up their own account, they could just activate it. So that's made a huge difference in traffic with students. We really wanted to expand our employer network. And with so many employers already tapped into Handshake, it just made sense. We have a lot of post-secondary institutions in this region, and many of the 4-year institutions already were using Handshake. So it allowed us to reach out to employers, or I guess be reached by employers who were already using Handshake to engage with the University of Cincinnati and some of our larger 4-year partners, and just tap Gateway too. So it opened up those employer connections, not only for the college as a whole, but more importantly for our students.
Yep.
And then the third piece that was really important for us is the experience module. So being able to really track work-based learning experiences. Work-based learning is such a huge part of our future. It's a huge part of our focus right now. We have a heavy focus on apprenticeship. In fact, we've had several initiatives wrapped in within the last 12 to 18 months, and we will continue to see that grow in apprenticeship and making sure that we have ample apprenticeship opportunities for employers and for students, as well as co-ops, internships, job shadows, whatever that looks like. We really wanted to be able to have a solid place to house all of that information, and we think Handshake fits the bill.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that.
Listen,
Absolutely.
I would underscore everything Christy just said from a programmatic standpoint as an employer. One thing I would say is that so for us, we have a lot of digital platforms we work with in social media and, platforms like LinkedIn, very strong partnership. But Handshake, unique brand and unique really proposition in the market and incredible, I think groundswell and kind of ecosystem of people. And so for us, this is really exciting. We're relatively newer in the community, and we are excited about the partnership with Handshake and everything we've done together so far. And, we look forward to how things will play out for all of us over the next couple of weeks and quarters and months and years. I think it's a win-win. We're all here, I think, out of the goodness. There's a certain goodness that drives everybody's heart here in creating new opportunities and see people grow. And so it's great to do it in an ecosystem environment like this.
Absolutely. Thank you, both of you. We're really excited to partner, obviously, with both of you, and glad to see that you're both reaping and seeing the rewards of what that looks like. I think we have time for one more question. So Christy, I'm going to give the last question to you. The question is, do you have non-degree programs, and does the college provide a pathway from non-degree to degree or to something like a stackable credential? And have you seen the popularity of those options shift with the pandemic?
Good grief, yes. So there is a lot of energy around, not just locally, not the state level, but nationally, and everywhere you can think of in between, this conversation about non-degree industry certifications, smaller bite-sized micro credentials all the way up to the degree. So we could probably talk for 10 hours about this. I'll try to be as brief as possible. So we do have non-degree options. Those non-degree options primarily fall under workforce solutions. Some of those include industry certifications. Some of them include what we call non-credit, right? So there's a difference between non-degree and non-credit. Non-degree just means that it is not within a degree pathway per se, whereas non-credit means it doesn't carry college credit hours with it and would have to have more of a formal, transfer over to a credit for prior learning kind of scenario. So I'll kind of give you an example of a program that we've been running for quite some time, which is actually a public-private partnership. We work with the Free Store Food Bank over in Cincinnati, as well as Belflex Staffing, which is the private piece of it, where they are very philanthropic in their nature, and they believe wholeheartedly in the Free Store Food Bank's mission. And the Free Store Food Bank believe wholeheartedly that their job is only done when they're put out of business. So they invest in workforce. They have workforce programs. We are the primary partner for the program called Lift the Tri-State. It focuses on logistics, inventory management, and transportation. Here in the greater Cincinnati area, we are a huge hub for logistics and transportation because of our proximity to much of the population in the country within 1 day's driving distance, as well as our fantastic regional airport. So this is a huge area of need that there is never any shortage of jobs for, including now. In fact, it's an increasing job market. So within this program, it's a 10-week intensive program, free to individuals who are looking for a new career pathway. The Free Store mixes in a lot of life skills and kind of support services to make sure that they're set up for success in their life. And then we provide 2 industry certifications within the logistics space as a non-credit and non-degree program opportunity embedded within that. But the pathways that we open up for them to be able to transition that into a degree program is, once they successfully achieve that industry certification, it articulates or it counts for the college credit that has a course that is attached to the same competencies or skills within that certification. Mm-hmm. So essentially they're coming through a community program partnership, gaining industry certifications, and if they choose to, converting that industry certification into college credit hours that can go into a college certificate, which is like 5 classes. So it's a really quick credential. And then they can take that into a degree program if they choose to. So there's a lot more that's being done in that space about how do we make sure we can pair up all of these different educational opportunities and really give value to every skill build, regardless of where it comes from and how formal it might be.
That's terrific. Christy, thank you so much. I just want to thank both you and Arthur for being here with us. Thank you for your advice, for your perspective, and for sharing your thoughts with everybody today. We really appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
to everyone that joined
Thank you
us,
very much.
thank you all.